Hi, I'm Cedric van Loon. I'm a journalist at ITdaily.com, and we're here to talk about cybersecurity. The security landscape is evolving very quickly, and attacks can happen in less than 60 seconds. Now, that sounds frightening, but a good human intervention can change everything. I am joined here to talk about this topic with Christopher Fielder, Field CTO at Arctic Wolf. Hi, Christopher.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Arctic Wolf is a global security operations partner. They are active in Belgium, and they help organizations to be ready for cybersecurity, to mitigate when something happens, and they're ready 24/7, which is really important in the security landscape. Now, Christopher, when I first saw the threat report that mentioned those 60 seconds, I was like, that sounds like an action movie. That's quite frightening. Could you tell me a bit more about how this can happen in those 60 seconds?
So it's important to understand that not every attack is going to happen that quickly, but some certainly can. So we need to understand that there's a range of different attacks that are out there. You know, some can be quite slow. We have things that are called APTs, advanced persistent threats. Those are your nation state actors. Those are your advanced attackers where they get into the environment and they move very slow. They could be in there for months, extended periods of time and really just slowly steal data. But on the flip side of that, you do have, the attacks can happen very, very rapidly. And that's caused by multiple issues, multiple things that could happen in the environment that we need to take into account nowadays. When I'm thinking about it, this is cyber crime that we're talking about. And crime, in the real world, there's different types. You have, long-term theft that can occur. People can steal money over lengths of time, or they can walk by a window and smash the window and steal something out of it and walk away, right? And cyber attacks can happen in the same fashion. So we do have those quick attacks that can occur. And the way that they're happening is, again, multiple things are coming into play here. One is that, unfortunately, a lot of environments that are out there right now have kind of left the door open to attackers. What we found is that 65% of the attacks that we responded to in our incident response team, 65% of them, the root point of compromise was some sort of remote access tool that the company, the organization, installed in their environment. So things like VPN, remote desktop protocol, those remote management tools, the things that you install in your environment to make it easier for you to do your job, attackers are using those also. Because unfortunately, companies, not all of them, are taking the necessary steps to secure them. So if we think about that again, like in the real world, imagine that you have a lock on your door, but you don't lock it, you don't turn it. So what good is it if you're not, taking those steps? So attackers are getting in that fast, and you have to think like, okay, if I left the door to my house open, how quickly would somebody be able to get in and steal something? Very, very quickly, right? So that's one reason. The other we have to think about is something I know we probably going to end up talking about, which is AI. Right? And we are not the only ones using artificial intelligence. Attackers are using AI as well, and attackers are able to automate a lot of their methods now. So once they do get in, they can quickly execute some of this automation, find what they're looking for and quickly take it out of the environment. So again, there's lots of things that go into the speed of an attack, but what's important to understand here is that they can happen very, very quickly. They can happen very, very slowly. But it's important that we first detect them and we respond at the speed at which they are attacking. So if they are going to attack quickly, we need to respond quickly because, that's kind of how we're going to eliminate some of the impact of what can result from these attacks.
Now, with AI, everything can happen very quickly, but it also lowers the bar in terms of complexity. So novice attackers can move very quickly and be very effective. How do you see that?
AI can make us all appear much more intelligent than we are, right? And that's one of the great things about AI right now, is it has the ability to really, kind of fill in the gaps of what we don't know and to get us up to speed very quickly. It does that for defenders. It does it for attackers as well, unfortunately. AI, I always talk about AI as it's neutral. It's a tool, right? It's neither good nor bad. It's something that, could be used for good, could be used for bad. I'm sure we could talk about that more in a little bit.
Yeah.
But as for right now, a good example here is phishing. right? Phishing is sending those emails that, could be used to gain access to the environment or get somebody to do something you don't want them to do. Lots of different things that phishing could be used for. But we used to tell people to detect phishing, to identify it by looking for things like grammatical mistakes, spelling mistakes, something that looks like it was written poorly in a language maybe they don't understand, or, something doesn't make sense. Now, I don't speak English, or I do speak English. Yeah, it almost felt like I didn't, right? I don't speak German. I don't
Yes.
speak Dutch. I don't speak French. But I guarantee I could use one of these AI models to write an email in almost perfect Dutch or German or French or whatever, and you wouldn't be able to tell that I didn't know that language because the AI is translating it for me. And it's translating it not just, by the book, like textbook, I guess you could say. It's translating it culturally as well, to where it feels like it's, native. And so it's very hard to detect those type of emails in that way. So then the next logical question is, then how do you detect something like that? And the answer to that is with AI.
Yeah.
So we're seeing that AI can be used to detect AI. And again, it can be used to compensate for kind of the shortcomings of some individuals or people, or to help speed up things that humans may be a little bit slower at, like detecting those types of emails.
With the speed of AI, everyone can hack in minutes. So the detection also have to happen really quick. How can a party like Arctic Wolf keep up on that pace?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one way that we're able to do it is by looking at all facets of the environment. And this is one of the most important key elements that so many organizations forget. And that's that we cannot leave any areas of the environment kind of unmonitored. So at Arctic Wolf, we believe in monitoring all aspects. So that's endpoints, that's network, that's, all the logs that we ingest, that's looking at all the areas of the clouds, looking at the behaviors of everyone in the environment, looking at everything, because any one of those pieces could be that one piece of the puzzle that allows us to detect the threat, detect it very quickly. Because we have to remember that, as the action occurs, it's being recorded by something, it's being sent in, and then we can detect it and we can respond to it. But again, when you talk about speed, that's where we're also able to utilize AI, because AI can be utilized to quickly detect and quickly respond in some cases. So we're leveraging AI in the right capacity, in the right facets, with humans that are in the loop to be able to make sure that AI isn't doing anything it should not be doing as well.
Now, you're painting a picture where technology can help a lot,
Yes.
but there's still always that human factor.
Absolutely.
Humans often tend to be the annoying backdoor that leaves something open. How do you try to tackle that? Because that is something that technology is more difficult to cover.
Yeah, so that's a very, very important piece, right? And we're seeing right now an increase in what we call the high-tech, low-tech attacks, right? And that's where attackers are using AI to target the individuals, the humans, because we've gotten to the point where we have very strong technical tools. We can build very strong walls, I guess you could say, that make it difficult for an attacker to get in. But just like I mentioned before with, you have a lock on your door, but if you don't lock it, what good is it? If you're able to leverage the humans, if you're able to, socially engineer them, you're able to take advantage of them, then you can kind of bypass those technical controls. So the way that we compensate for that is by educating our end users. That's why we have something called managed awareness, where we're able to then really target the users and say, here's what we need to know about your environment. Here's what you need to learn. This is how you protect your environment. This is what you watch out for. Because if you don't educate the people in your environment, then they will be taken advantage of. We're seeing a very high increase in this, unfortunately. And again, this isn't something that's overly difficult to compensate for. We just have to make time to educate our people, and it's that continuous repetitive education as well. A lot of organizations take the approach of, hey, here's a one time a year security training, watch this 1 hour video, sign this paper, and you're done. We can't do that. We have to educate people, weekly. We have to do phishing simulation. We have to, update them on what is current. That way they are aware of the current attacks that are happening, the trends that are taking place, and how attackers are trying to manipulate them.
Now, we see a lot of password reuse that are being reused, security protocols that aren't followed. That can happen on the work floor, but that can also happen on the leadership level.
Absolutely.
How do you see that?
Yeah, we've seen an unfortunate trend in do as I say, not as I do,
Yeah,
right?
because you have to convince the C-level.
Absolutely. We have, because the sea levels are quite often the ones that are going to be targeted, right? So spear phishing is the idea of, okay, I can go after everyone in the environment, or I can go after that high value user as well, because that high value user is going to allow me to maybe not only get further access into the environment, but also do something called business email compromise. Not to go too deep into this, but business email compromise, maybe if I'm able to get access to the CFO's account, the chief financial officer, then I could take that account, if I have access to it, and I can send an email to the finance team saying, hey, transfer money to this account. And it's my account, right? So, because it looks like it's legitimate. So we have to teach those individuals that have those privileged accounts, we need to say, hey, you need to lead by example. You need to be the ones that are going out there and actually, setting the example, setting the standard for how you implement security. What we found was that we did a human report on this, the kind of the human flaws and human errors that are out there. What we found is that a large percentage of the leadership had clicked on phishing links. I believe it was almost in the 80s percentile that had clicked on phishing links. But of those that did, a vast majority also said that they were very confident that their environment would not be compromised. So they are the ones that are unfortunately not following the rules. So again, it's important to lead by example, to go out there and to say, hey, this is something that we all need to do, and I'm going to be the first to do it.
Now, if you look at a company, a culture of accountability, is that something that is realistic for you?
Yeah, I believe so. So, accountability is something that we do need to be careful about and cautious about. We need to say that, I'm going to set these policies out there, but it's not about just writing the policies. You also have to educate your people on the policies. That is something that we're seeing is kind of a trend in the wrong direction. So a good example is an AI policy, right? So a lot of organizations are saying, hey, we're going to write these AI acceptable use policies, how the company can use OpenAI, ChatGPT, all those models that are out there. But they're not educating their users on the fact that the policies exist. They're not educating their people on what the policies entail, what it actually says. They're just going, hey, here's the policy, read it, sign, say that you read it, good enough. And that's maybe okay to, if somebody does something they shouldn't do, then you can hold them accountable. But we have to think they've already done something they shouldn't have done, which is they probably put data into one of those models that they shouldn't have put in there. So it's not just about holding people accountable, it's about trying to prevent them from doing those bad actions as well. So accountability is important, but it's just as important to really educate people and train them on what they should and should not do.
You already talked about AI and how that can be important. If we look at the human that can leave backdoors open, do you think that AI can assist them by hoping that they don't do that, or that they can they simply compensate what the faults of humans are?
So AI is never going to be able to exist and work in a vacuum. AI has to work in tandem with humans. Humans in the loop is what we talked about. I mentioned before that AI is simply a tool. It's nothing more than a hammer, right? A hammer can be used to build a building. A hammer can be used to smash a window. And that's exactly what AI is. So AI can compensate. AI can do things like say, hey, I found this weakness in the environment. I found this vulnerability. I found this backdoor that's open. I found these passwords that are reused. But it's then most of the time going to be up to the human to then take the necessary action to correct those mistakes and to then educate people on what they should not have done in the first place. We can even use AI to do things like, hey, look for those common weaknesses that we mentioned before. People are reusing passwords, and then use that to then, assign training to people. Hey, train them on what they should do, what they should not do. But it's again going to be up to the human to then watch that training and learn from it. So humans and AI have to work together. We can't expect AI to just be the solution that's going to solve everything. Humans have to be involved as well.
are there specific shortcomings today of AI where human expertise is still necessary, or is the human more of a supervisor?
I think there are absolutely areas where AI is falling short, right? Because AI has implicit weaknesses. There are things that AI is not always going to be good at. AI is only as good as the data that it is trained on, if that makes sense, right? So if AI has a limited data set, then it only knows so much about what it should do. It only knows so much about the environment. A good example I generally give is I say, okay, let's say I take a brand new AI and I show it a series of pictures of cats. And I say, every picture I show it of those cats it's has 4 legs and it's furry and it's gray or it's brown or it's white. And it's like, these are all cats. And then I show it a picture of a orange 3-legged cat. It's not going to know what that is because it didn't see that in what I trained it on. In the same situation, if I train these models on the same data over and over and then throw something new at it, it's not going to know what to do. So that's one of the shortcomings of AI. And in that case, you have to have a human as that supervisor, but also as somebody that's training the model, that's looking for those, those activities, those areas of improvement. And then, we're moving into the area of agentic AI. And agentic AI is moving beyond the concept of generative AI. So for people that aren't as familiar, generative AI is being able to say AI can generate something. I can ask AI a question and then AI can generate an answer for me. Agentic AI is saying not just generate an answer for me, but generate an answer with a recommendation on an action and then take that action as well. So we're getting into the age of AI being able to take those actions. In our case, it's response actions, being able to say, hey, I saw something bad that happened, an attack happened very quickly, I need it to be able to respond very quickly. Now we can have AI take those response actions, but we need to have humans at a minimum that are observing the environment that says, if AI takes an action, was that action okay? Was that action something it should have done? And if it shouldn't have done it, can I correct it? Or, should I allow AI to take that action? Or next time, should I tell AI not to take? It's AI, or it's humans acting as kind of the mentors of AI, the kind of the overseers of AI, the teachers of AI, and I think working in partnership with AI. So it's kind of all together. So that's why we've moved beyond this concept of human in the loop. You might have heard that term before, right? To now what we say is human on the loop, which is humans that are continuously involved with all aspects of AI instead of just, okay, we're one piece of the AI puzzle. Now we're working in tandem with AI at all areas of the environment.
Can humans keep up with the ever-expanding volume? Because AI is infinite. Mm-hmm. Humans, not really. So can they keep up with that? Can they still be on the loop, or are they losing that loop because it gets progressively worse?
No, I think humans can stay. Again, if we are able to implement this in the right fashion, if we're able to say, okay, we've implemented the right AI, we've given it the right data to work off of, we've assigned it the right tasks, we've given it the right knowledge, if we put the right expectations into place, then humans can absolutely stay involved with it and stay on top of it and stay on that loop. I think where we get out of control here is when we apply improper or unnecessary expectations to AI, where we expect AI to do more than it really should. That's where we run into a problem. And that's why we're very cautious here, where we say, we know how we want to use AI. We are going to implement it in the right way, but we are not going to, I guess we say, get above our skis, get ahead of our skis. We're not going to, just throw AI out there and say we hope for the best. We're not going to do that. We make sure that we have humans that are on that loop at all aspects of AI being utilized.
The amount of analysts that still detect something that AI didn't detect, is that increasing? Is that decreasing? Is that still something that happens often today?
There are still going to be times when humans are able to detect something that AI hasn't. Because remember, As I mentioned before, AI is only as good as the data that's been trained on. And so there's going to be times when things come up that AI has not been trained on that a human's able to detect. A human's able to say, that's unusual, that's anomalous, that's something, we have hunters that are able to go through the environment and look for things that maybe have gone undetected by current detection methods. But what we're able to then do is then take that data that the humans detected and feed that back into the model and say, hey, we found this, now you can start looking for this. And what that also allows is that our humans can then go back in and look for something else. So they don't have to keep looking for that. They don't have to keep compensating for that model. They could say, we found this, now you look for it, now we'll look for something new. So again, working in tandem.
Security teams that operate today, they do that differently than 5 years ago. What new skills do security teams need today to cope with the ever-expanding challenge of AI?
Yeah, so I want to be very cautious in the way that I answer this, right? Because I don't want to make it sound like, we don't have to have the skill sets we used to have. I'm very cautious in the way I say that because I go out there and tell analysts all the time, you have to maintain your core skill sets. You have to be able to maintain, what made you a security analyst in the first place. You have to be able to detect threats in the environment. You have to be able to make the right decisions on how to respond. You have to know the basics of the environment. Otherwise, you won't know if AI is giving you the right answers, right? Let's think about it in the concept of like the traditional, worker manager role. I have had times in my career where I've had managers that have said, I don't know what that is, but I don't need to know what that is because I have you to tell me what that is. It's like, well, then you don't know if I'm lying to you, right? And so that's a problem. In the same way, we have to have AI and people work together where we can say, okay, the human understands enough to where they can call the AI out and say, that's incorrect, or you came to the wrong conclusion, or you detected something that's not a problem. So humans need to maintain the basic core skill set that made them security analysts. It's important. Do not lose that skill. And then on top of that, then understand how to work with the AI, understand how, how to feed the data back into it, how to correct it, how to modify it. So it's about learning how to work with the AI, but also maintaining your core security skills. So I encourage everyone out there that's in the security realm, do not think that AI is just going to do your job for you. It's absolutely not. It may make some aspects easier, but it's incumbent upon you. It's important for you to be able to go through and kind of act as the manager of AI, act as the one that's saying, okay, did you do that correct? Are you wrong? And how are we going to fix it if you are?
So, Christopher, we talked about that frightening attack that can happen in 60 seconds. Thank God that humans can still help with this. If you want to have our audience one big takeaway that they take to their organizations that they can try to implement and fix tomorrow, what would that be?
Oh, narrowing it down to one is very difficult, so I hope you don't mind. I got a few recommendations here, right? But I'll try to make them quick. One is just talking about that topic of AI, and that's to understand that AI, it's already in our environments. It's already pervasive throughout technology. It's already being used by everybody. We need to be prepared for that. So if your organization does not already have an AI acceptable use policy, get one now. Understand how AI can be used, understand, the business use cases, write your acceptable use policy around that concept. How is data going to be put into AI? Remember that AI is not like a traditional database where you can put data in and then delete it and it's gone. If you put data, personal, private information, company, proprietary information into AI, you've trained it on that and you can't get that data back out. So prevent that from happening. And if you do have an AI acceptable use policy, make sure you've trained your users on it. Make sure they're aware of, hey, this is what we want you to do, what we don't want you to do with AI. Be cautious of that. So you, again, be familiar with that. The other is, since we are talking about the speed of attacks, have an incident response plan. Have something in place to where when those attacks happen, you can just automatically go into your IR plan. It's like muscle memory is the term we use, to where, you've practiced so much to where you don't even have to think about it. You just immediately go. So have your incident response plan, practice your incident response plan, be able to just quickly respond when the incident occurs. And if you don't have the right people, you don't have, what's necessary to be able to respond, work with a partner. That's why Arctic Wolf exists, right? We have an incident response team to where when there is an emergency, just like the fire department, we can come in and we can help put out that fire as quickly as possible, help mitigate that damage. So, that IR plan is really important to try to respond quickly to those fast attacks, but also slow attacks. And then I would say is, if you want to do more research on any things that we've talked about, that's why we put a lot of time and effort into the research that we do. So you check out the Arctic Wolf threat report that we put out for 2026. We're really proud of that. There's a lot of great data in there that you can read, and then people that are watching this can read as well. I highly recommend doing that. And then we will be at CyberSec in May. So if you do have questions on anything that we've talked about, or you want to go into more detail, then you can find us. And I think you're going to be there as well, right?
Yes.
So yeah,
Absolutely.
so please reach out, and we'd be happy to talk more about this.
All right. Well, it was a great chat, Christopher. Thank you for your time.
Appreciate it.
So the most important thing that we need to take out of this is that attacks happen quicker and quicker. It is frightening to see that in less than 60 seconds. It's going to keep evolving, so we need to keep on our toes. So the people are still going to be a liability. They need to be trained. They need to be supervising everything and see that everything's going in the right direction. In terms of how AI can be frightening, AI can also help us. And that is the thing that we saw with Arctic Wolf, how they implement everything. It is important so that they can keep up the speed, but with still human supervision so that everything is controlled. That last takeaway is important. Make a good AI policy. Make sure you get that. And I hope that you have learned a lot in this conversation. And we'll talk soon. Thank you very much.